She was assaulted and called names on her big day by her billionaire CEO partner, unaware she was pregnant with twins. "Don't lie to me." The voice exploded through the penthouse suite, filled with a rage that could shatter glass. "It's all here. Financial irregularities, misrepresented client billings, potential fraud charges. Did you really think you could hide this from me?" "Cole, this is completely untrue. These allegations are baseless. Someone is trying to destroy my reputation. You know me. You know I would never. I know you're a lying, manipulative bitch who's been playing me for a fool." The words hung in the air like poison. Just hours earlier, Celine Westbrook had been accepting the Entrepreneur of the Year award, standing on stage in her emerald silk gown, believing she had everything. Her business empire, the love of her life, a future bright with possibility. What she didn't know was that inside her body, two tiny hearts were already beating. Two innocent lives she was unknowingly carrying, while the man she trusted above all others transformed into her worst nightmare. Have you ever had someone you loved completely turn into a stranger before your eyes? Have you ever been betrayed by the person who was supposed to protect you? What would you do if your greatest triumph became your darkest hour? This is the story of a woman who thought she had it all, a billionaire CEO who showed his true colors when it mattered most, and two innocent lives hanging in the balance of a love story that would test the very limits of forgiveness and redemption. Stay with me, because what happens next will make you question everything you think you know about love, power, and what people are truly capable of when their masks finally fall away. If you believe people can change, hit that like button now, because this journey is going to challenge everything you think you know about second chances. The ballroom of the Four Seasons glittered like something out of a fairy tale. Every surface caught and reflected the soft amber glow of crystal chandeliers hanging from the vaulted ceiling like captured stars. The city's most powerful entrepreneurs, investors, and business leaders filled the space with the comfortable buzz of success and ambition. Designer gowns swirled across the marble dance floor, while tuxedoed waiters glided between guests offering champagne and canapes that cost more than most people's monthly salary. At the edge of this glittering world stood Celine Westbrook, and she had never felt more alive. Her emerald silk gown flowed around her like liquid starlight, custom designed to complement her dark hair that cascaded in perfect waves down her back. But it wasn't the dress or the jewelry or even the opulent setting that made her glow. It was the crystal award she held in her hands, still warm from the stage lights, still echoing with the thunderous applause that had greeted her acceptance speech. Entrepreneur of the Year. After 5 years of 18-hour days, rejected proposals, and people telling her she was too young, too idealistic, too different to succeed in their world, she had finally proven them all wrong. Westbrook Communications had grown from nothing more than a laptop in her studio apartment to a multi-million-dollar empire built on authentic storytelling and genuine human connection. "Celine, darling, you were absolutely luminous up there." Margaret Ashford materialized at her elbow like a perfectly coiffed vulture, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. As the city's premier society columnist, Margaret had made a career out of finding scandal in even the most pristine reputations. "Though I have to say, your acceptance speech was quite bold. All that talk about authenticity and changing the world through storytelling. Very idealistic." "Thank you, Margaret." Celine's voice remained warm despite the barely concealed condescension in the older woman's tone. "I believe business can be both profitable and purposeful." How wonderfully naive. Margaret's laugh tinkled like breaking china. "Though I couldn't help but notice your handsome escort seems to have vanished. Where is the illustrious Cole Winthrop this evening?" Celine's eyes scanned the crowd, searching for the familiar figure of her partner. Cole should have been easy to spot. At 6'3" with his commanding presence and perfectly tailored tuxedo, he typically dominated any room he entered. As the youngest CEO in his family's tech empire history, worth over $4 billion according to the latest Forbes estimate, Cole Winthrop was undeniably the most powerful man in attendance tonight. They had been together for 2 years now, a relationship that had evolved from a business partnership into something deeper and more meaningful than Celine had ever thought possible. Cole had been her champion, supporting her vision when others dismissed it, opening doors that would have remained forever closed to someone from her background. He was right there by the bar just a moment ago. Celine finally spotted him near the far wall, but something in his posture made her stomach clench with sudden unease. Cole stood with his back to the room, his phone pressed to his ear, his shoulders rigid with tension that was visible even from across the crowded ballroom. Ah yes, there he is. Margaret followed her gaze with predatory interest. He looks rather intense, doesn't he? Not exactly the picture of a man celebrating his girlfriend's triumph. Before Celine could respond, she felt a firm hand grip her upper arm. Cole had appeared beside her so quietly she hadn't seen him approach. Up close, the tension she had noticed from across the room was even more pronounced. His steel-gray eyes held a coldness she had never seen before, and his jaw was set in that particular way she had learned meant trouble. "We need to talk. Now." His voice was low and controlled, but there was something underneath it that made the fine hairs on Celine's arms stand on end. "Cole, what's wrong? Can it wait until—" "No, it can't wait." His grip on her arm tightened just enough to be uncomfortable without being obviously painful. "Smile and say goodbye to your friends. We're leaving." Something in his tone sent alarm bells ringing through Celine's mind. This wasn't the Cole she knew, the man who had whispered words of love and encouragement, who had celebrated her victories as if they were his own. This was someone else entirely, someone cold and dangerous wearing her boyfriend's face. Of course. She forced her voice to remain steady even as her heart began to race. "Just let me make a few more connections. This is my night, after all, and there are still people I should thank." I said, "Now, Celine." The barely controlled violence in those 4 words made several nearby guests turn with curious expressions. Margaret Ashford's eyes practically glowed with the scent of scandal brewing. Celine forced a bright smile and gave a small wave to the watching crowd. "Well, it has been such a wonderful evening, but duty calls." She hoped her voice sounded more casual than she felt. "Thank you all for making tonight so special." As Cole guided her toward the exit with that firm grip still on her arm, Celine caught sight of her reflection in one of the ballroom's mirrored walls. She looked like a woman living her dream, elegant and successful and perfectly happy. The irony wasn't lost on her that this might be the last moment of her life when that reflection would be true. The elevator ride to their penthouse suite felt endless. Cole stood beside her in silence, his hand still gripping her arm with increasing pressure, his face a mask of cold fury that seemed to radiate from him in waves. Celine tried to make sense of what could have possibly happened in the space of an hour to transform the supportive partner she knew into this stranger beside her. Had something gone wrong at his company? Had there been some crisis that required immediate attention? But even in his most stressful business moments, Cole had never looked at her with this kind of barely contained hostility. The elevator dinged softly as they reached the top floor, and Cole released her arm only to immediately place his hand on the small of her back, guiding her toward their suite with a pressure that felt more like hurting than escorting. His key card beeped against the lock, and the door swung open to reveal the penthouse that had been their shared sanctuary for the past year. The moment the door closed behind them, Cole released her so abruptly that she stumbled forward, catching herself against the marble entryway table where she had set her award just hours earlier, when they had been getting ready for what was supposed to be the best night of her life. 2 years. Cole's voice was deadly quiet as he moved to the floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a spectacular view of the city lights below. 2 years I've wasted on you. Cole, what are you talking about? What's happened? Celine turned to face him, her emerald gown rustling against the marble floor. You're scaring me. When he turned back to her, Celine felt her blood turn to ice water in her veins. She had never seen Cole look at anyone with such contempt, such cold fury. His usually controlled features were twisted with an emotion that bordered on hatred, and his steel-gray eyes blazed with a fire that seemed to consume all the warmth she had ever seen in them. What's happened is that I just received some very interesting information about your little company, darling. The endearment dripped from his lips like acid. Care to explain why the SEC is launching an investigation into Westbrook Communications? The words hit Celine like a physical blow. Her knees went weak, and she had to grip the edge of the marble table to keep from falling. What? That's impossible. There's no investigation. Don't lie to me. Cole's voice exploded through the penthouse with such violence that the crystal stemware on the bar card seemed to vibrate in response. He pulled out his phone and thrust it toward her with enough force that she instinctively flinched backward. It's all here. Financial irregularities, misrepresented client billings, potential fraud charges. Did you really think you could hide this from me? Celine stared at the phone screen, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. The article was from Financial Insider, a blog known for breaking major business scandals before the mainstream media picked them up. The headline read, "Rising PR Star Under Federal Investigation for Alleged Fraud." Below it was a photo of her accepting her award just hours earlier, her face glowing with pride and joy. The article detailed allegations that were so far from the truth, they seemed like they belonged to someone else's life entirely. Misrepresented billings to clients. False financial statements to investors. A web of lies designed to inflate the company's value and profitability. Each accusation was more damning than the last, and each one was completely, utterly fabricated. Cole, this is completely untrue. These allegations are baseless. Someone is trying to destroy my reputation. Her voice came out stronger than she felt, powered by the righteous anger of innocence under attack. You know me. You know I would never. I know you're a lying, manipulative bitch who's been playing me for a fool. The words hit Celine like a slap across the face. She had never heard Cole speak to anyone with such venom, such casual cruelty. The man she had shared her bed with for 2 years, who had whispered words of love and support, who had made her believe in the possibility of a future together, was looking at her like she was something disgusting he had found on the bottom of his shoe. How dare you speak to me like that? Celine's voice shook with a mixture of hurt and rage. Even if you believe these lies, that doesn't give you the right to. Rights. Cole's laugh was like breaking glass, sharp and dangerous. You want to talk about rights? What about my right to know I was sleeping with a criminal? What about my right to know that my girlfriend was using my name and connections to cover up her fraudulent little empire? That's not true. Celine's voice rose to match his, desperation bleeding through her careful control. Cole, someone is setting me up. Can't you see that? On the night of my biggest triumph, suddenly these allegations surface. This is clearly what? A conspiracy against poor little Celine. Cole moved closer, and for the first time in 2 years of knowing him, Celine found herself backing away from the man she loved. You know what I think? I think you've been running con since day one. I think our entire relationship has been one long grift to get access to my network and my money. That's insane. Celine's back hit the wall, and she realized with growing alarm that Cole had effectively cornered her. Cole, you're not thinking clearly. Sit down. Let's talk about this rationally. Let me show you my books. Call my accountant. Anything to prove. Don't tell me how to think. Cole's hand slammed into the wall beside her head with such force that she felt the vibration through her skull. The sound echoed through the penthouse like a gunshot, and Celine couldn't suppress the flinch that ran through her entire body. Cole's face was inches from hers now, close enough that she could feel his breath hot against her skin, close enough to see the fury burning in his eyes like wildfire. Do you have any idea what you've done to me? To my reputation? The moment this story breaks wide, every business deal I've made, every partnership I've built, will be questioned because of my association with you. Celine pressed herself against the wall, suddenly and completely afraid of this man she had thought she knew. This wasn't the Cole who had held her during thunderstorms, who had surprised her with midnight picnics on the penthouse terrace, who had made her believe that love could be both passionate and safe. This was a stranger wearing his face, someone capable of violence that seemed to radiate from him in waves. Cole, please. Her voice came out smaller than she intended, the voice of someone who suddenly understood how quickly safety could transform into danger. You're scaring me. I'm scaring you. His laugh was bitter and cold, devoid of any humor. You should be scared. You should be terrified. Because when I'm done with you, you'll never work in this industry again. I'll make sure of it. You can't do this. Celine tried to edge away from him along the wall, but Cole moved to block her path. These allegations are false, and when the truth comes out, the truth. Cole's voice dropped to a whisper that was somehow more frightening than his shouting had been. The truth is that you're a worthless fraud who thought she could use me to climb the social ladder. Well, congratulations, sweetheart. You've reached the top. Now enjoy the fall. Without warning, his hand shot out toward the marble table where Celine had set her crystal award. For a split second, she thought he was reaching for her, and her body tensed for an impact that didn't come. Instead, his fingers closed around the award that represented 5 years of her life, 5 years of sacrifice and determination and proving everyone wrong who had ever doubted her. He held it up for a moment, letting her see what he was about to do, letting the threat hang in the air between them. Then, with deliberate and calculated cruelty, he hurled it against the marble floor with all the force of his considerable strength. The crystal exploded against the stone like her dreams shattering in real time. Thousands of pieces scattered across the floor, each one catching the light like teardrops made solid. The sound echoed through the penthouse with a finality that seemed to mark the end of everything she had believed about her life just hours before. Cole, no. Celine dropped to her knees without thinking, her hands reaching desperately for the pieces of her shattered award. The emerald silk of her gown pulled around her like spilled paint as she tried to gather fragments that cut her palms, leaving traces of blood on the crystal shards. Tears streamed down her face, not from the physical pain, but from the emotional devastation of watching something so precious destroyed with such casual violence. This was everything to me. Her voice broke as she held pieces of crystal that would never be whole again. Everything I worked for. Good. Cole stood over her, watching her crawl on the floor among the ruins of her achievement with cold satisfaction. Because it's all you're ever going to have. No legitimate business will touch you after this. No investor will take your calls. You're finished, Celine. Why are you doing this? She looked up at him through her tears, her hands bleeding from the crystal shards, her gown torn and stained. Even if you believe these lies, why are you being so cruel? Because I trusted you. Cole's voice remained that terrifying whisper, each word carefully chosen for maximum impact. I let you into my world, my business, my life. I was actually starting to think you might be the one. Do you know how that feels? To realize the woman you've been falling for is nothing but a common criminal. I'm not a criminal. Celine struggled to her feet, her hands leaving bloody prints on the marble table as she hauled herself upright. Cole, please, just listen to me. Give me a chance to prove these allegations are false. One phone call to my accountant. One look at my real books. I don't want to see your books. I don't want to see you. I want you gone. The finality in his voice hit her like another physical blow. Gone. Out of my suite. Out of my building. Out of my life. Tonight. Celine stared at him in disbelief. This man who had been her anchor, her champion, her safe harbor in a world that had often been hostile to someone from her background. You can't just throw me out. My things are here, my clothes, my computer. We're here. Cole moved to the bar cart with casual indifference, as if destroying someone's life was just another item on his evening agenda. I had them removed while we were at the gala. Everything's waiting for you in the lobby. The calculated cruelty of it stole her breath away. While she had been on stage accepting her award, basking in what should have been the greatest moment of her career, Cole had been systematically erasing her from his world. While she had been thanking the people who had supported her journey, he had been planning her exile. 2 years, Cole. Her voice came out steadier than she felt, powered by a growing anger that was beginning to burn through the shock and heartbreak. 2 years of my life, and you can just throw it all away based on some anonymous blog post. I can and I will. Cole poured himself 3 fingers of scotch with hands that didn't shake even slightly, as if ending relationships was as routine for him as closing business deals. You have 10 minutes to get out, or I'll have security escort you. The threat of public humiliation, of being dragged from the building like a criminal, sent a fresh wave of fear through Celine's system. But underneath the fear, something else was growing. A fury so pure and righteous it seemed to burn away everything else. Cole, please. She hated the pleading tone in her voice, but desperation made her try one last time. I'm begging you. Don't do this to us. Whatever you think I've done, we can work through it. I love you. Cole paused with the glass halfway to his lips, and for just a moment, Celine thought she saw a flicker of the man she had fallen for. But when he turned back to her, his eyes were cold as winter steel, empty of any warmth or recognition. Love. He spoke the word like it tasted bitter on his tongue. You don't know what love is. Love requires honesty, trust, respect. All things you're apparently incapable of. He took a long sip of his drink, studying her over the rim of the glass like she was a specimen under a microscope. You know what the most pathetic part is? I actually thought you were different. I thought you were strong, independent, someone who could stand beside me as an equal. Instead, You're just another gold-digging fraud who saw a mark and went for it. That's not true. Celine's voice grew stronger as anger began to override heartbreak. That's not who I am. No. Cole set down his glass with deliberate precision. Then explain to me how a woman who supposedly built a multi-million-dollar company is now under investigation for fraud. Explain to me how someone who talks about authentic storytelling has been living a lie. I can't explain it because it's not true. Celine's voice rose to fill the penthouse with her fury and desperation. Someone is trying to destroy me, and instead of standing by me, you're helping them do it. Cole's expression darkened further, if such a thing was possible. Don't you dare try to make me the villain here. You brought this on yourself. By working 18-hour days to build something meaningful. By refusing to compromise my values even when it would have been easier. By loving you despite your family's objections and your friends' snide comments about my background. Your background. Cole repeated the words with a sneer that transformed his handsome features into something ugly and cruel. Let me guess. Poor little girl from the wrong side of town, pulled herself up by her bootstraps, overcame all obstacles through sheer determination. Is any of that story even true, or was it all part of the con? The casual way he dismissed everything she had overcome, everything she had achieved, everything that made her who she was, hit Celine harder than any physical blow could have. He was erasing not just their relationship, but her entire identity, reducing her life's work to nothing more than an elaborate deception. Get out. Cole's voice carried a note of finality that seemed to echo off the marble walls. Get out before I do something we'll both regret. Like what? The words left Celine's mouth before she could stop them, powered by a reckless fury that had temporarily overwhelmed her fear. Beat me. Would that make you feel better about yourself? Cole's face went white with rage, and for a moment that stretched like eternity, Celine thought he might actually strike her. She could see the violence in his eyes, the barely restrained impulse to lash out physically at the woman who had dared to challenge him. His hands clenched into fists at his sides, and she found herself holding her breath, waiting for the blow to fall. Instead, he grabbed her by the shoulders with enough force to lift her up onto her toes. His fingers dug into her arms through the silk of her gown, and she knew there would be bruises there tomorrow in the shape of his hands. Don't tempt me, you manipulative bitch. His voice was barely human now, reduced to something animal and dangerous. Don't push me beyond what I'm capable of, because right now, I'm holding onto my self-control by a thread. Let go of me. Celine tried to break free from his grip, but Cole was too strong, his fingers tightening until she could feel them through muscle and bone. You're hurting me. Good. He shook her hard enough to make her teeth rattle, hard enough that her head snapped back and forth like a doll's. Maybe now you understand how it feels to be betrayed by someone you trusted. The shaking stopped as abruptly as it had begun. Cole released her so suddenly that she stumbled backward, catching herself against the wall. The physical pain from his grip was nothing compared to the emotional devastation of watching the man she loved transform into someone capable of violence against her. I never betrayed you. The words came out as a whisper, but they carried more weight than any scream could have. I never lied to you about who I am or what I've built. But you're showing me exactly who you really are. A man who throws away 2 years without even giving me a chance to defend myself. A man who resorts to violence when he doesn't get his way. I haven't resorted to violence. Yet, the threat hung in the air between them like a loaded weapon. Celine realized with crystalline clarity that she needed to leave, not because of his ultimatum, but because she was genuinely afraid of what he might do if she stayed. The man she had loved, the man she had trusted with her heart and her body and her dreams, was capable of hurting her in ways that went far beyond words. You're right. She straightened her torn dress with as much dignity as she could muster, wiping the blood from her hands on the emerald silk. I should go, not because you're throwing me out, but because I finally see who you really are. And who's that? A coward. The words came out steady and strong, powered by a clarity that cut through her fear and heartbreak. A man so insecure about his own worth that he has to destroy anyone who threatens his sense of superiority. You talk about trust and honesty, but the moment someone challenges your perfect little world, you lash out like a spoiled child. Cole's face darkened dangerously. Careful, Celine. You're in no position to be making accusations. What are you going to do? Ruin me more than you already have. Hurt me worse than you already have. She wiped more blood from her hands, leaving crimson streaks on her gown like battle scars. Go ahead. Show me exactly how powerful you are by destroying someone who loved you. You never loved me. You loved what I could do for you. If that were true, don't you think I would have asked you for money? For business connections? For favors? Celine's voice grew stronger as anger began to burn away the last of her fear. In 2 years, what did I ever ask you for besides your time and your affection? Cole opened his mouth to respond, then closed it again. For the first time since this nightmare began, he seemed at a loss for words. Nothing. Celine pressed her advantage, stepping away from the wall to face him directly. Because I didn't need your money or your connections. I built my company on my own merit, with my own clients, through my own hard work. The only thing I ever wanted from you was your love, and apparently, that was too much to ask. Love isn't enough when it's built on lies. The only lie here is the one you're choosing to believe because it's easier than admitting you never really trusted me at all. Celine moved toward the door, her steps steady despite the trembling in her hands. Goodbye, Cole. I hope someday you figure out the difference between loyalty and control. Don't walk away from me. His voice carried a note of desperation that she had never heard before. We're not done here. Yes, we are. Celine turned back one last time, and Cole was struck by how regal she looked despite her torn dress and bloodied hands. Despite everything he had done to break her, she stood there with her chin raised and her eyes blazing with a strength he had tried to destroy but couldn't quite manage. We're done because you chose to believe strangers over the woman who shared your bed for 2 years. We're done because when I needed you most, you became my worst enemy. And we're done because I deserve better than a man who thinks love is conditional on perfection. With that, Celine Westbrook walked out of the penthouse suite that had been her home, leaving Cole standing alone among the shattered pieces of her award and the ruins of what they had built together. The door closed behind her with a soft click that seemed to echo with finality. Cole stood in the sudden silence, surrounded by the evidence of what he had done. Crystal fragments caught the light like frozen tears. Drops of Celine's blood stained the marble floor. The lingering scent of her perfume mixed with the acrid smell of his own rage. For just a moment, doubt crept into his mind like poison. What if she was telling the truth? What if the allegations were false? What if he had just destroyed the best thing in his life based on lies designed to tear them apart? But then he remembered the article, the detailed accusations, the potential damage to his own reputation. Cole Winthrop hadn't built a billion-dollar empire by being weak or sentimental. He had made the hard choice, the necessary choice. He poured himself another scotch and tried to convince himself that he had done the right thing. 3 months later, the morning sickness hit Celine like a freight train. She barely made it from her cramped studio apartment's kitchen to the tiny bathroom before her stomach emptied what little she had managed to eat for breakfast. The retching seemed to go on forever, leaving her weak and shaking on the cold tile floor. Dr. Sarah Martinez had kind eyes and gentle hands as she moved the ultrasound wand across Celine's still flat abdomen. The gel was cold against her skin, but Celine barely noticed. Her attention was fixed on the screen, where 2 tiny forms pulsed with life she had unknowingly been carrying since before her world imploded. Congratulations, Celine. Dr. Martinez's voice was warm and professional. You're about 14 weeks pregnant. With twins. The words hit Celine like a physical blow. She stared at the screen, watching 2 tiny hearts beating in perfect rhythm. 2 souls that had been growing inside her since before that terrible night when everything fell apart. Twins. Beautiful, healthy twins. Dr. Martinez pointed to the screen with obvious pleasure. Based on the measurements and development, I'd estimate conception occurred approximately 12 weeks ago. 12 weeks. Celine's mind reeled as she calculated the timeline. That would put conception right around the time of the Entrepreneur Awards Gala, when her life had been perfect and she had been planning a future with Cole. These babies had been created during their happiest time together, conceived in love before that love had turned to violence and hatred. Are you all right? Dr. Martinez asked, noting the pale complexion and shell-shocked expression on her patient's face. I know this can be overwhelming news, especially with multiples. I'm fine. Celine managed to force the words out, though she was anything but fine. She was unemployed, nearly bankrupt from legal fees fighting the false fraud charges that had eventually been dropped, when the real culprit was caught. A disgruntled former employee had been embezzling funds and had tried to frame Celine to cover his tracks, but by then the damage was done. Clients had fled, investors had backed out, and Westbrook Communications had collapsed under the weight of false accusations. Cole had gotten his wish. She was ruined, exactly as he had promised. And now she was carrying his children. "Do you have a support system?" Dr. Martinez asked gently. "The father won't be involved." Celine's voice came out sharper than she intended. "It'll be just me and them." Dr. Martinez nodded without judgment. She had seen enough single mothers to know that families came in all configurations. "Well, you're in excellent health despite the stress you've obviously been under. The babies are developing perfectly. We'll want to monitor you closely since you're carrying multiples, but everything looks very positive." As Celine walked out of the medical center with ultrasound photos in her purse, her mind wandered back to that terrible night 3 months ago. Cole had been so angry, so convinced of her guilt, that he had never even given her a chance to prove her innocence. He had chosen to believe lies over the woman who loved him, violence over conversation, destruction over trust. The memory of his hands on her shoulders, shaking her with barely controlled rage, made the choice easy. These children would never know their father existed. She would raise them alone, far from the man who had shown himself capable of such cruelty towards someone he claimed to love. Celine Westbrook had lost everything that night in the penthouse. Her business, her reputation, her faith in love itself. But as she placed her hand protectively over her still flat abdomen, she realized she had also gained something precious beyond measure. 2 tiny lives that would give her a reason to rebuild, to fight, to believe in the future again. Cole Winthrop had tried to destroy her, but instead he had unknowingly given her the greatest gifts of her life. The irony wasn't lost on her. The man who had called her worthless and barren in his fury had actually made her rich beyond his comprehension. These children would be her redemption, her purpose, her proof that love could triumph over hatred in ways he would never understand. Have you ever ignored red flags in someone you loved? Let me know in the comments, because what happens next will test everything you think you know about forgiveness, redemption, and whether people can truly change when they're forced to face the consequences of their actions. 2 years had passed since that night, and Celine had built a new life from the ashes of the old one. Moving to New York had been the best decision she could have made. The city was big enough to get lost in, diverse enough to accept her story without judgment, and full of opportunities for someone willing to work hard and start over. She had taken a job with Authentic Voices, a small nonprofit focused on storytelling for social causes. The work fed her soul, even if it didn't pay much. They lived simply but happily in a modest apartment in Brooklyn, surrounded by the kind of love that couldn't be bought or sold or destroyed by false accusations. The double stroller bumped gently over the path as Celine pushed 18-month-old Emma and James through Central Park on a beautiful spring afternoon. The children babbled at everything they saw, their bright eyes taking in the world with the wonder that only toddlers possessed. Emma had her father's steel-gray eyes and Celine's dark hair, while James had Cole's strong jaw and her artistic temperament. They were beautiful children, brilliant and healthy, and completely unaware that their father was one of the most powerful men in America. Celine had built their world carefully, filling it with books and music and laughter, with friends who had become family and experiences that money couldn't buy. "Ducky!" Emma shrieked with delight as they approached the pond where families gathered to feed the waterfowl. "Ducky, ducky, ducky." "Yes, sweetheart, those are ducks." Celine pulled a bag of approved duck food from the stroller basket. "Would you like to feed them?" James clapped his hands together, his face serious with concentration as he watched the ducks paddle across the water. He was the quieter of the twins, more thoughtful, more likely to study a situation before diving in. Emma, on the other hand, was ready to leap from the stroller and chase the ducks around the pond. Celine Westbrook. The voice made her blood freeze in her veins. She knew that voice, had heard it whisper words of love and roar with fury, had learned to read its every nuance and inflection. Slowly, she turned around, hoping against hope that she was mistaken. But there was no mistaking the tall, imposing figure walking toward her across the grass. Cole Winthrop looked older than she remembered, more haggard. His usually perfect appearance was slightly disheveled, His expensive suit wrinkled as if he had been traveling. There were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there 2 years ago, and his steel-gray gaze carried a weight that seemed to have settled permanently into his features. Cole. Her voice came out steadier than she felt, though her heart was racing like a hummingbird trapped in her chest. What are you doing in New York? Business meetings. He stopped a few feet away, his eyes immediately drawn to the double stroller where 2 toddlers looked up at him with curious expressions. I was cutting through the park and I thought. I wasn't sure it was really you. His voice trailed off as he took in the children more fully. Emma was reaching toward him with chubby hands, babbling something that sounded like a greeting. James studied this tall stranger with serious consideration, his gray eyes, so remarkably like his father's, taking in every detail. Are they yours? Cole's voice was barely above a whisper. Yes. Celine moved slightly to position herself between Cole and the stroller, protective instincts flaring to life. They're mine. They're beautiful. He couldn't seem to look away from them. How old? 18 months. She watched him do the math, saw the exact moment when realization hit him like a physical blow. His face went pale as he stared at Emma, who had begun reaching toward him with increasing insistence, clearly wanting to be picked up by this interesting new person. Celine. His voice was hoarse, uncertain, completely different from the cold fury she remembered from their last encounter. Are they mine? For a moment, she considered lying. It would be so easy to say no, to protect her children from a man who had shown himself capable of such cruelty. But as she looked into his eyes, she saw something she had never expected to see there. Genuine remorse, deep pain, and what looked like the beginnings of understanding about what he had done. Yes. The word came out quietly, but it carried the weight of 2 years of secrets. They're yours. Cole stumbled backward as if she had struck him. His hand reached out blindly for the park bench beside him, and he sank down onto it heavily, his eyes never leaving the children who were babbling happily in their stroller, completely unaware of the magnitude of this moment. Why didn't you tell me? His voice cracked with emotion. When did you find out? I found out 3 months after you threw me out of your life. Celine's voice remained steady, but there was steel underneath the calm surface. And I didn't tell you because of what you said to me that night. Because you showed me exactly what kind of man you really are. Celine, please. Cole's composure was cracking like ice under pressure. I know I was wrong. About everything. The charges were dropped, weren't they? You were innocent all along. You mean the fraud allegations that you used as an excuse to destroy our relationship and assault me in your penthouse? Cole flinched at the word assault, but he didn't deny it. He couldn't. The memory of that night was burned into both of their minds with perfect clarity. I was angry. I wasn't thinking clearly. You were thinking clearly enough to have my belongings removed while I was at the gala. Celine's voice grew colder with each word. Clearly enough to threaten my career and my livelihood. Clearly enough to put your hands on me in violence. I've regretted that night every day since it happened. Good. You should. They stood in uncomfortable silence for a moment, watching Emma and James play with their toys, oblivious to the tension crackling between the adults in their world. Other families moved around them in the park, children laughing on playgrounds, couples walking hand in hand, normal people living normal lives without the weight of such complicated history. They're incredible. Cole's voice was soft with wonder as he watched his children. What are their names? Emma and James. Can I? His voice broke slightly. Would it be all right if I said hello to them? Celine studied his face carefully, looking for any sign of the rage or violence she remembered from that terrible night. What she saw instead was genuine longing mixed with uncertainty, a man who seemed afraid of his own children in a way that was completely foreign to his usual commanding presence. Why? Her voice carried all the protective fury of a mother defending her young. So you can disappear from their lives when it becomes inconvenient. So you can throw them away like you threw me away. I would never hurt them. You said you'd never hurt me either. Cole was quiet for a long moment, absorbing the truth of that statement. When he spoke again, his voice was barely audible. You're right. I did hurt you. In ways that were unforgivable. But Celine, these are my children. Don't I have a right to know them? You gave up any rights when you chose to believe lies over the woman who loved you. Celine's voice was fierce with protective anger. When you chose violence over conversation. When you chose destruction over trust. I know I made terrible mistakes. Cole's hands were shaking as he gripped the edge of the park bench. But please, don't punish them for my failures. I'm not punishing them. I'm protecting them from a man who thinks love is conditional on perfection. I don't think that anymore. Don't you? Celine's eyes blazed with challenge. What happens when they disappoint you? When they make mistakes? When someone tells you lies about them? Will you believe those lies too? Cole had no answer for that, and they both knew why. His track record spoke for itself. When tested, he had chosen suspicion over trust, destruction over support, violence over love. I should go. Celine began to push the stroller away from him, away from the complicated emotions and painful memories he represented. It was unexpected seeing you. Wait. Cole's voice was desperate in a way she had never heard before. Please, can we talk? Really talk. There's so much I need to say to you. There's nothing left to say, Cole. Celine didn't slow her pace. You made your choices that night, and I've made mine. At least let me apologize properly. He stood up from the bench, following her, but maintaining a respectful distance. Let me try to explain. Explain what? Celine stopped walking and turned to face him with such sudden fury that he actually took a step backward. How finding out I was innocent changed your mind about destroying me. How discovering you have children suddenly makes you want to be a better man. She shook her head with bitter laughter. It's too late for explanations. Is it? Cole's voice carried a note of hope that seemed almost painful. What if I told you I've spent the last 2 years trying to make amends for what I did? What if I told you I've been searching for a way to contact you, to apologize, to somehow make things right? I'd say it sounds like guilt, not love. You're right. The admission seemed to cost him something. It started as guilt. But Celine, seeing you again, seeing our children. His voice broke slightly. I've been dead inside since that night. Nothing has mattered. Nothing has felt real. I threw away the only genuine love I've ever known because I was too proud and too scared to trust it. And I'm supposed to feel sorry for you. No. Cole's voice was quiet but firm. I'm supposed to spend the rest of my life trying to earn your forgiveness. Celine stopped walking and studied his face. This man who had once been everything to her, and then become her worst nightmare. Forgiveness isn't something you earn, Cole. It's something you receive as grace. And right now, I'm not feeling very graceful. I understand. He looked down at Emma and James, who were beginning to get restless in their stroller. But please, just tell me, is there any chance? Any possibility that someday you might be able to trust me again? Celine looked at this man who had given her the greatest gifts of her life in Emma and James, and who had also caused her the deepest pain she had ever known. The man who had made her believe in love and then shattered that belief with his own hands. I don't know. The honesty in her voice seemed to surprise them both. The woman you destroyed that night isn't someone who can be easily rebuilt. The trust you shattered isn't something that can be glued back together like broken crystal. But it's not impossible. I don't know what's possible anymore, Cole. Celine looked down at her children, these beautiful beings who deserve the whole truth about their lives, even the painful parts. All I know is that my children deserve better than a father who might disappear the moment someone tells him lies about their mother. They do deserve better. They deserve a father who's learned from his mistakes, who's grown into someone worthy of their love. Have you grown into that man? Cole was quiet for a long moment, studying her face and the faces of the children he had never known existed. I don't know, but I'd like the chance to try. If this story is hitting you emotionally, please share it because someone needs to hear this message about the complexity of forgiveness and the possibility of redemption. The next part of this journey will test everything you think you know about second chances and whether love can truly conquer the deepest betrayals. What about the next time someone tries to destroy me? Celine's voice carried the weight of hard-earned wisdom. What about when business rivals spread rumors or former employees make false accusations? Will you stand by me then, or will you throw me away again? I'll stand by you. Always. Easy words, Cole. You said them before. I know. His voice was heavy with the knowledge of his own past failures. And I'll spend every day proving I mean them this time. Emma chose that moment to throw her stuffed duck out of the stroller, and it landed at Cole's feet. Without thinking, he bent down to pick it up, his movements slow and careful, as if he were approaching a wild animal that might bolt at any sudden gesture. Ducky. Emma clapped her hands together, delighted that this tall stranger had retrieved her favorite toy. Cole held the stuffed animal for a moment, studying its worn fabric and gentle expression. "May I give this back to her?" Celine nodded, watching carefully as Cole approached the stroller. His hands were shaking slightly as he offered the duck to Emma, who grabbed it with both chubby fists and immediately tried to put it in her mouth. "Thank you," he said softly to his daughter, and Emma responded with a babbled string of sounds that might have been words or might have been pure joy. James, not to be outdone by his sister's interaction with this interesting new person, held up his own toy. A small wooden truck painted bright red with yellow wheels that were slightly askew from enthusiastic play. "Truck," James announced solemnly, as if he were sharing state secrets. "That's a very nice truck." Cole's voice was thick with emotion as he addressed his son. "What color is it?" "Red." James's face lit up with pride at demonstrating his knowledge. "Fast truck." "The fastest," Cole agreed, and James beamed with satisfaction. Celine watched this interaction with a mixture of emotions she couldn't untangle. These were her children, the most precious things in her world, and they were meeting their father for the first time without knowing that's who he was. There was something both beautiful and heartbreaking about their innocent acceptance of this stranger who shared their eyes and their stubborn chin. "They're perfect," Cole whispered, his gaze moving between Emma and James with wonder. "Absolutely perfect." "They are." Celine's voice was fierce with protective love. "And they're the reason I'm here, not you." Cole nodded, understanding the distinction. He wasn't being given this moment for his own benefit, but because these children deserved to know their father existed, even if they couldn't understand the complexity of their situation yet. "How are you?" His voice was tentative, as if he was afraid the answer might destroy this fragile connection they were building. "Really, I know things have been difficult since that night." "We're good." Celine's answer was honest but guarded. "Happy. The nonprofit work is fulfilling, even if it doesn't pay much. We have a community here, friends who love us for who we are, not what we can provide." "I'm glad." Cole's relief seemed genuine. "You deserve happiness." "Do I?" Celine's voice carried an edge of challenge. "Because 2 years ago, you seemed to think I deserved destruction." Cole flinched as if she had struck him. "I was wrong. About everything. The investigation proved you were completely innocent, exactly as you had tried to tell me. And if there hadn't been an investigation, if you'd never learned the truth, would you still think I was a criminal? I don't know." The admission seemed to cost him something, but he forced it out anyway. "I'd like to think I would have come to my senses eventually, but I can't say that with certainty." "At least you're honest." "I'm trying to be. About everything." Cole paused, watching James attempt to make his truck climb the side of the stroller. "I've been in therapy since that night." Celine's eyebrows rose slightly. Cole Winthrop admitting to therapy was like admitting to weakness, something the man she had known would never have done. "Have you?" "Anger management, emotional regulation, relationship counseling. I realized that what I did to you wasn't just about the fraud allegations." His voice grew quieter, more introspective. "It was about control, about my own insecurities, about a lifetime of thinking I could fix problems by throwing money or power at them." "And what did you learn?" "That I was a coward." The words came out stark and honest. "That I used anger to avoid dealing with vulnerability. That I destroyed the best thing in my life because I was terrified of being truly seen and possibly found wanting." Celine studied his face, looking for signs of manipulation or performance. What she saw instead was genuine pain and self-awareness that seemed to have been hard-won through months or years of difficult work. "What else did you learn?" "That love isn't about possession or control. That trust has to be freely given, not demanded. That the strongest people are often the ones who admit their weaknesses and ask for help." Cole's gaze met hers directly. "That I had no idea what real strength looked like until I watched you walk out of that penthouse with your head held high despite everything I had done to break you." "Those are nice words, Cole. But words are easy." "You're right. Actions matter more." Cole pulled out his phone with careful movements, as if sudden gestures might shatter this fragile moment between them. "This is why I was in New York 6 months ago." Celine looked at the screen he offered, scrolling through a series of photos that told a story she never could have imagined. Cole working in what appeared to be a community center, his expensive suit replaced by jeans and a t-shirt as he helped paint walls. Cole reading to children in what looked like a shelter, his normally perfect hair mussed, and his face animated with genuine joy. Cole helping with construction projects, his manicured hands dirty with honest work. I've been volunteering with organizations that help rebuild lives after trauma. His voice was quiet, almost embarrassed. Domestic violence shelters, programs for people starting over after financial devastation, support groups for families torn apart by false accusations. Why? The question came out more curious than accusatory. Because I needed to understand the kind of damage I'm capable of causing. I needed to see what it looks like when someone has to rebuild their entire life because of another person's cruelty. Cole's hands were steady now, but his voice carried the weight of genuine remorse. I needed to face the fact that I'm capable of being the villain in someone else's story. Celine felt something crack inside her chest, not breaking but softening slightly. This wasn't the arrogant, untouchable billionaire she had known. This was someone who had been humbled by consequences, changed by confronting his own capacity for harm. I also started a foundation. Cole continued, scrolling to more photos. The Authentic Truth Foundation. It provides legal defense and financial support for entrepreneurs who face false accusations or vindictive prosecution. People like you, who built something meaningful and had it destroyed by lies. You created a foundation because of what happened to me. I created it because of what I let happen to you. Because I was complicit in your destruction when I should have been your strongest defender. His voice grew stronger, more certain. Because I realized that if I could do that to someone I claimed to love, there were probably others out there facing the same kind of systematic destruction without anyone to help them fight back. Emma chose that moment to throw her duck again, this time with enough force that it bounced off Cole's chest before landing on the ground. Instead of being startled or annoyed, he laughed. A genuine, delighted sound that made both children giggle in response. She has good aim, he said, retrieving the duck once again. She has your throwing arm. And your artistic sensibilities, apparently. Cole gestured toward James, who had somehow managed to balance his truck on top of his head while making vrooming sounds. Is that advanced engineering or abstract art? According to James, it's a flying truck that delivers pizza to astronauts. Space delivery services. Very practical. Despite herself, Celine found the tension in her shoulders beginning to ease. This easy banter, this gentle humor, reminded her of the Cole she had fallen in love with before everything went wrong. The man who could make her laugh during stressful moments, who found wonder in small things, who treated her dreams as if they mattered as much as his own. They fell into comfortable conversation about the children, their personalities, their milestones, their daily routines. Emma was the extrovert, making friends with everyone she met and treating the world as her personal stage. James was more introspective, preferring books to people and finding magic in quiet moments. Both of them were advanced for their age, speaking in full sentences and showing early signs of the intelligence they had inherited from both parents. Emma said her first word at 10 months. Celine found herself sharing. It wasn't mama or dada. It was more. More what? Everything. More food, more songs, more attention, more world. She's never been satisfied with just enough of anything. She sounds like you. Cole's voice carried warmth and something that might have been pride. What about James? His first word was why. He's been asking questions about everything ever since. Last week he wanted to know why the sky is blue, why birds can fly but people can't, and why sad songs make people feel better. Did you have answers? I had some answers. For the others, we looked them up together. James loves research almost as much as he loves story time. They sound incredible, brilliant and curious, and Cole's voice trailed off, and when he spoke again, it was barely above a whisper. I've missed so much. The pain in his voice was raw and genuine. Celine felt her heart clench despite her best efforts to maintain emotional distance. This is forgiveness completely off the table. Celine looked at her children, both now covered in snacks and thoroughly enjoying their father's attention, though they had no idea that's who he was. I don't know. Forgiveness is complicated when children are involved. How so? Because it's not just about me anymore. It's about whether you can be trusted with their hearts. Whether you're capable of unconditional love for people who will inevitably disappoint you sometimes. I want to be the father they deserve. Wanting isn't enough, Cole. Celine's voice was firm, but not unkind. Being a parent means showing up every day, even when it's inconvenient. It means putting their needs before your pride. It means loving them when they make mistakes, when they embarrass you, when they choose paths you don't understand. I know, and I want the chance to prove I'm capable of that kind of love. Are you? Celine's challenge was direct and uncompromising. Because parenting isn't a business deal you can control or a problem you can solve with money. It's messy and unpredictable and sometimes thankless. It's getting up at 3 in the morning with a sick child who throws up on your favorite shirt. It's sitting through terrible school plays where your kid forgets their lines. It's watching them fail at things they care about and finding ways to help them learn resilience. I'm willing to learn. Learning means making mistakes. Are you prepared for that? Are you prepared to fail sometimes and keep trying anyway? Cole looked at Emma and James, who were now engaged in an elaborate game that seemed to involve throwing their toys in the air and clapping when they landed. His heart expanded in ways he had never experienced, filling with a love so immediate and overwhelming it threatened to bring him to his knees. I'm prepared to try. Every day? For as long as you'll let me. Celine felt that crack in her chest widen slightly. This wasn't the arrogant, controlling man who had destroyed her life 2 years ago. This was someone humbled by experience, changed by consequences, possibly worthy of a chance. But caution was a hard-won survival skill, and she couldn't afford to risk her children's emotional safety on possibility alone. If I were to consider letting you into their lives, gradually, carefully, what would that look like to you? Whatever you're comfortable with. Cole's answer came quickly, as if he had thought about this extensively. Supervised visits at first, maybe. A chance to be part of their routine slowly. Building trust over time instead of demanding it immediately. And if I decide you can't be trusted, if I see signs of the man you were before, then I walk away. Permanently. The words seemed to cost him something, but he said them without hesitation. Because their emotional safety matters more than my desire to be their father. The answer surprised Celine with its maturity. The old Cole would have argued, would have demanded his rights, would have threatened legal action. This man was offering to put his children's well-being above his own wants, even if it meant losing them forever. One meeting, she said finally, the words feeling both momentous and terrifying. Next month. Supervised, in public, for 1 hour. That's all I'm willing to risk right now. Thank you. Cole's relief was evident, but so was his understanding of how tenuous this opportunity was. I'll call you when I'm ready. Don't push me, don't pressure me, and don't try to contact me before then. I won't. I promise. But Cole. Celine's voice carried a warning that cut through the afternoon air like a blade. If you hurt them, if you hurt me again, there won't be a third chance. Do you understand? I understand. And Celine. Cole's voice was thick with gratitude and something that might have been hope. I know I don't deserve your trust or your forgiveness, but I'm grateful for this chance to prove I can be better. As they prepared to leave the park, Emma reached for Cole with sticky hands, babbling something that sounded remarkably like bye-bye. James waved solemnly, as if he were a diplomat ending an important negotiation. She doesn't know what she's saying, Celine said quickly when she saw tears gathering in Cole's eyes. I know, but maybe someday she will. Watching Cole's gentle interaction with their children, seeing his genuine emotion and careful respect for the boundaries she had set, Celine felt something she hadn't experienced in 2 years. Hope, fragile and tentative, but real nonetheless. Maybe people could change. Maybe love could survive betrayal and violence and rebuild itself into something stronger. Maybe her children could have a father who would love them unconditionally and protect them from the kind of pain he had once caused. The question was whether she was brave enough to risk finding out. 6 months had passed since that encounter in Central Park, and true to his word, Cole had not contacted Celine once. No calls, no messages, no attempts to pressure her into moving faster than her own careful timeline. The silence had been both reassuring and somehow disappointing, though Celine refused to examine that contradiction too closely. Now she sat in a busy coffee shop in Brooklyn, Emma and James secured in high chairs beside her small corner table, watching the door with nervous energy that had nothing to do with caffeine. The call she had made 3 days ago had been entirely her decision, made after weeks of watching her children ask questions about other families they saw in the park. "Mama, where are Daddy?" Emma had asked with the blunt curiosity of a toddler, pointing at a father pushing his daughter on the swings. Some families have mommies and daddies, Celine had explained carefully. Some have just mommies or just daddies. Some have grandparents or aunts and uncles. All different kinds of families can be full of love. But where are Daddy? James had pressed, his serious gray eyes, so much like his father's, studying her face with uncomfortable intensity. It was that question, repeated with increasing frequency, that had finally convinced Celine to make the call. Her children deserved the truth about their lives, even the complicated parts. They deserved the chance to know their father, even if that relationship had to be carefully managed and closely supervised. When Cole walked through the coffee shop door, Celine was struck again by how much he had changed. The arrogant bearing she remembered was gone, replaced by something more humble, more uncertain. He spotted them immediately and approached slowly, as if sudden movements might shatter this fragile opportunity he had been given. "Thank you for calling." His voice was quiet, respectful. "I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't." Celine gestured to the chair across from her. "Sit down. We have an hour." Cole's attention was immediately drawn to Emma and James, who were finger-painting with mashed banana on their high chair trays, creating abstract masterpieces that would have made Jackson Pollock proud. Emma looked up at him with curious gray eyes that were mirror images of his own, while James continued his artistic endeavors with the serious concentration of a master craftsman. "They're so much bigger," Cole breathed, his voice thick with emotion. "So much more themselves. They grow fast at this age. Emma has 15 words now, and James is working on full sentences. Can I?" Cole's voice was hesitant, almost shy. "Would it be all right if I talked to them?" Celine nodded, watching carefully as Cole leaned forward with gentle enthusiasm that seemed genuine and unforced. "Hello, Emma." "Hello, James. I'm very happy to see you again." Emma giggled and clapped her banana-covered hands together, delighted by the attention from this tall, interesting stranger. James looked up from his high-chair masterpiece and studied Cole with the serious consideration of someone making an important decision. After a moment of deliberation, James held out a banana-covered finger as if offering to shake hands. "Hi," he said solemnly. "Hi, James." Cole accepted the tiny handshake with all the gravity of a business deal, which made James break into a smile that was unmistakably his father's. "Hello, James. I'm Cole. It's very nice to meet you properly." "Cole," James repeated, testing the sound of the name. "Cole Truckman." "Truckman." Cole's eyebrows rose in question. "He's been obsessed with construction vehicles since he learned to walk," Celine explained. "Anyone who works with tools or machines is automatically a truckman in his worldview." "I see. Well, I'm honored to be a truckman." Cole turned his attention to Emma, who had been patiently waiting her turn. "And how are you today, Emma?" "Good." Emma's voice was bright and clear. "Good girl. You are indeed a very good girl. And a very talented artist, I see." Emma beamed with pride and immediately tried to show Cole her banana painting by smearing more fruit across the high chair tray. The resulting masterpiece was enthusiastically abstract and thoroughly inedible. "Beautiful," Cole said with complete sincerity. "What is it?" "Banana," Emma announced as if this should have been obvious to anyone with functioning eyes. "Of course, the finest banana art I've ever seen." For the next hour, Cole talked with his children about their interests, their daily routines, their favorite foods and songs and games. He asked thoughtful questions and listened to their answers with the kind of focused attention that children crave and so rarely receive from adults. When Emma threw pieces of banana at him, he laughed and gently redirected her to eating instead of food fighting. When James launched into a detailed explanation of why trucks were better than cars, Cole nodded seriously and asked follow-up questions that showed he was genuinely interested in his son's perspective. Celine found herself relaxing despite her intentions to remain vigilant. This wasn't the Cole she remembered from their relationship, the man who had been charming but often distracted, who had treated children like small adults who should conform to grown-up expectations. This was someone who seemed to understand that children operated on their own logic, that their concerns were real and important even when they seemed trivial to adult eyes. "They're incredible," Cole said during a brief moment when both children were focused on their snacks. "So smart and funny and exhausting," Celine finished with a tired smile. "Don't romanticize it, Cole. Parenting isn't all precious moments and photo opportunities. It's also diaper blowouts and tantrums and sleepless nights when they're sick or scared or just feeling difficult." "I know. Or rather, I'm beginning to understand." Cole watched James attempt to feed banana to his toy truck. The families I work with in the shelters, they've taught me a lot about what real parenting looks like. The daily grind of it, the way love shows up in ordinary moments as much as special ones. The families you work with. At the domestic violence shelter, Cole's voice grew quieter, more serious. I read to the kids there twice a week. Help with homework sometimes. It's shown me how much damage adults can do to children, even when they think they're protecting them or acting in their best interests. Celine studied his face, looking for signs of performance or manipulation. What she saw instead was genuine humility and what looked like hard-won wisdom. What have you learned? That children are incredibly resilient, but they're also incredibly vulnerable. That they absorb everything, even when adults think they're not paying attention. That they need consistency and safety more than they need grand gestures or expensive gifts. Cole paused, watching Emma try to stack banana pieces into a tower. That being a parent is a privilege, not a right, and it can be taken away if you don't handle it with care. Those are good lessons. Hard-won lessons. Cole's voice carried the weight of experience. I've met men who lost their children because they couldn't control their anger. Women who had to rebuild their entire lives because someone they trusted turned violent. Families torn apart by lies and false accusations. His eyes met hers directly. I've seen what I did to you reflected in other people's stories, and it's been educational. Educational. Horrifying. Cole corrected himself. Shameful. The kind of education that forces you to confront the worst parts of yourself and decide whether you're going to change or keep repeating the same destructive patterns. Emma chose that moment to dump her entire cup of water onto her high chair tray, creating a banana water soup that immediately began dripping onto the floor. Instead of showing irritation or frustration, Cole calmly reached for napkins and began cleaning up the mess while Emma giggled at the chaos she had created. Oops, Emma said cheerfully, as if flooding her high chair had been a delightful surprise rather than a predictable toddler move. Oops indeed, Cole agreed, wiping down the tray with practiced efficiency. Good thing we have napkins. You're surprisingly good at that, Celine observed. Lots of practice with spills at the shelter. Kids are kids everywhere. Cole finished cleaning and gave Emma her cup back, now only half full of water. They test boundaries. They make messes. They need patient adults who don't lose their temper over normal childhood behavior. And if Emma had done that 2 years ago, during one of our dinners together, how would you have reacted? Cole was quiet for a moment, clearly thinking back to the man he had been before his world fell apart. Probably with irritation. Definitely with impatience. I would have seen it as a disruption to be managed rather than a normal part of being around children. And now I see it as Emma being Emma. A curious, energetic little person who's still learning how the world works. Cole's voice was warm with affection as he watched his daughter attempt to drink and play with her water simultaneously. She's not trying to be difficult. She's just being 2 years old. They fell into easier conversation after that, talking about the children's routines, their favorite books, their emerging personalities. James was showing early signs of being a natural leader, organizing elaborate games that Emma happily followed along with. Emma was the family entertainer, making faces and silly noises that could dissolve any tense moment into laughter. Can I ask you something? Cole said as their hour began to wind down. What? What you said in the park, about me putting my hands on you in anger. I know I was wrong. I know it was unforgivable, but I need you to know that I would never what? Hit me. Celine's voice was steady but watchful. You're right, you never hit me. But Cole, domestic violence isn't just hitting. It's intimidation, it's threats, it's using your size and strength to make someone afraid. It's destroying their property to show them what you're capable of doing to them. Cole's face went pale as the full implications of what she was saying sank in. You were afraid of me that night. Terrified. The admission came out quietly but clearly. I had never seen you like that before. The way you grabbed me, shook me, the things you said. I genuinely didn't know what you might do next. Jesus. Cole's hands were shaking as he gripped the edge of the table. Celine, I am so sorry. I had no idea. I never meant to frighten you. Intent doesn't matter when someone bigger and stronger than you is screaming in your face and threatening to destroy your life. Celine's voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath. The impact is the same whether you meant it or not. You're right. You're absolutely right. Cole looked at his children, happily making messes and exploring their world with fearless curiosity. The thought of anyone making them feel the way I made you feel is unthinkable, unforgivable. Cole's voice was firm with conviction. If anyone ever hurt them the way I hurt you, I would move heaven and earth to protect them. Then you understand why I've been so careful about letting you into their lives. I do, and I'm grateful that you're willing to consider it at all. Cole paused, watching James attempt to share his banana with Emma, who accepted the offering with royal graciousness. They're lucky to have you as their mother. They're lucky to have a mother who puts their safety first. Always. Cole's voice carried the weight of a promise. Whatever happens between us, their safety comes first. Their emotional well-being, their need for stability and security. I will never do anything to jeopardize that. As they prepared to leave, James reached toward Cole with banana-covered hands, clearly wanting to be picked up. Cole looked to Celine for permission before carefully lifting his son from the high chair, supporting him with practiced ease that suggested he had been paying attention during their visit. "Bye-bye, Cole Truckman," James said seriously, patting Cole's cheek with a sticky palm. "Goodbye, James. Thank you for sharing your banana art with me." Emma, not to be outdone, held up her arms demanding equal attention. Cole shifted James to one side and scooped up his daughter, who immediately began babbling a long string of sounds that might have been words or might have been pure toddler joy. "Bye-bye, Emma," he said softly. "You're both so wonderful." Watching Cole hold their children, seeing the wonder and love in his eyes, Celine felt something shift inside her chest. This wasn't the man who had terrified her 2 years ago. This was someone who had been broken down and rebuilt, humbled by consequences, and changed by the hard work of confronting his own capacity for harm. "One more meeting," she said as Cole reluctantly handed the children back to her. "Next month. If it goes well, we'll discuss a regular schedule." "Thank you." Cole's gratitude was evident, but so was his understanding of how precious and fragile this opportunity was. "I won't let you down. You better not." Celine's voice carried both warning and something that might have been hope. "Because they're starting to like you, and if you disappoint them now." "I won't," Cole said firmly. "I promise you I won't." As Celine loaded the children back into their stroller and prepared to leave, she felt the weight of the decision she was making. This was more than just allowing Cole to meet his children. This was opening the door to the possibility of forgiveness, of rebuilt trust, of a future that looked nothing like the past, but might be beautiful in its own way. The question was whether she was brave enough to walk through that door, and whether Cole had truly become someone worthy of the second chance she was considering giving him. What would you do in Celine's position? Vote in the comments. Give him a chance or protect the children at all costs. Because what happens next will challenge everything you think you know about redemption, forgiveness, and the possibility of healing from the deepest betrayals. 1 year had passed since that first supervised meeting in the coffee shop. 12 months of gradual trust building, of carefully monitored visits that had slowly evolved from formal meetings to something that almost resembled normal family time. Cole had kept every promise, respected every boundary, and shown up consistently for his children in ways that had surprised even Celine. The transformation hadn't happened overnight. There had been setbacks, moments when old patterns threatened to resurface, times when Celine had to remind herself why she was taking this risk. But there had also been breakthrough moments that had cracked her heart open in unexpected ways. Like the time Emma had fallen and scraped her knee during a playground visit, and Cole had immediately dropped to his knees beside her, gathering her into his arms while speaking in the soft, soothing tones that seemed to come naturally to him now. Or the afternoon when James had proudly shown Cole a drawing he had made at preschool, a stick figure family with 4 people holding hands, and Cole had asked permission to keep it, treating the crayon masterpiece like priceless art. Now they walked through Prospect Park on a crisp autumn afternoon, Emma riding on Cole's shoulders while James held Celine's hand, all of them bundled in jackets and scarves against the changing season. To anyone watching, they looked like a normal family enjoying a weekend outing. The reality was far more complicated, but it was also something Celine had never thought possible. "Higher, Daddy, higher." Emma shrieked with delight as Cole bounced her gently on his shoulders. "Any higher, and you'll be in orbit," Cole laughed, but he stood on his tiptoes to give her the extra height she craved. "Daddy." The word still sent complicated emotions through Celine every time she heard it. Emma had started using it naturally about 3 months ago, and James had followed suit shortly after. Cole had cried the first time Emma called him daddy, tears streaming down his face as he held his daughter and whispered thank you over and over again. "Mama, watch me," James called out as he spotted a low tree branch perfect for climbing. He released Celine's hand and scrambled up with the fearless agility of a preschooler who believed gravity was merely a suggestion. "I see you. You're so brave," Celine called back, then turned to find Cole watching her with an expression she had learned to recognize as love mixed with gratitude and something that might have been hope. "What?" she asked. "Just thinking about how lucky I am." "Are you? To have this. To have them. To have earned back even a small piece of your trust." Cole lifted Emma down from his shoulders and set her on her feet so she could chase the falling leaves that danced around them in the breeze. "Yes, I'm incredibly lucky. It wasn't luck, Cole. It was work. Hard work, every single day. I know, and I'll keep working every day to be worthy of this family." Celine studied his profile as he watched their children play, noting how much he had changed over the past year. The anger was gone, replaced by patience she had never seen in him before. The arrogance had been replaced by humility that seemed genuine and hard-won. The need for control had been replaced by acceptance of life's beautiful messiness, of children's unpredictable needs and emotions. "I have something to tell you," she said quietly. "What?" Cole turned to face her fully, hope and fear warring in his expression. "I've been thinking about what you asked me last month. And I think I'm ready to try again. Slowly, carefully, but I think I'm ready to see if we can rebuild what we lost." Cole's intake of breath was sharp and sudden, as if she had surprised him despite the months of careful relationship building they had been doing. "Really? The man who destroyed me 2 years ago wouldn't have spent a year proving he had changed. He wouldn't have put the children's needs before his own desires. He wouldn't have been patient with my boundaries or understanding of my fears. And this man reads bedtime stories with different voices for each character." Celine's voice grew warm with recollection. "This man learned to change diapers from YouTube videos. This man sits through terrible puppet shows and claps like they're Broadway productions. This man apologizes when he makes mistakes and asks for help when he needs it." Cole's eyes filled with tears that he didn't try to hide. "I love you, Celine. I never stopped loving you, even when I was too broken to show it properly. I love you too." The admission felt both monumental and inevitable. Despite everything, in spite of everything, because of everything we've been through together. Does this mean? It means we try again. Not as the people we were before, but as the people we've become. Celine reached for his hand, and for the first time in over 2 years, she didn't hesitate or pull away. "It means we build something new from the ashes of what we destroyed." Cole's fingers intertwined with hers, his grip gentle but sure. "I promise I'll never take this for granted again." "Good. Because our children are watching, and they need to see what real love looks like. Not perfect love, but honest love. Love that survives mistakes and grows stronger because of them. Is that what this is?" "I think so. I hope so." As Emma and James ran toward them, demanding attention and snacks and stories about why leaves change colors, Celine reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. The betrayal and violence of that terrible night had nearly destroyed her. But it had also forced her to discover her own strength, to build a life based on her own worth rather than someone else's approval. And somehow, impossibly, it had also given her the family she had always dreamed of. Not perfect, but real. Not easy, but worth fighting for. "Ready to go home?" Cole asked as he scooped up Emma while James claimed Celine's hand, all of them talking and laughing as they had learned to do together. "Yes." Celine looked at their little family with wonder. "Let's go home." But the path back to love hadn't been simple or straightforward. There had been setbacks and moments of doubt, times when old wounds had reopened and trust had felt impossible to rebuild. There had been difficult conversations about the past, about the scars that might never fully heal, about the work that would be required to maintain the fragile peace they had built. 6 months earlier, there had been a night when Emma had woken up from a nightmare, crying for her daddy in a way that had broken both their hearts. Cole had been there within minutes, having moved into an apartment nearby, so he could be available for emergencies without crowding Celine's carefully constructed independence. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Cole had whispered as he gathered Emma into his arms, his voice soft with the kind of love that had taken practice to access, but now came naturally. Scary dream. Emma had sobbed into his shoulder. Monster hurt Mama. Celine had felt her blood turn cold at those words, wondering what her daughter might have overheard or sensed about their complicated history. But Cole had simply held Emma closer and spoke to her with the gentle wisdom he had learned through months of therapy and self-reflection. Sometimes we have scary dreams about the people we love, he had said softly. But dreams aren't real, and I promise you that Mama is safe. I will always make sure that Mama and you and James are safe. Promise. I promise. Cross my heart. That night, watching Cole comfort their daughter with such tenderness and genuine understanding, Celine had felt something fundamental shift inside her. This wasn't just about forgiveness anymore. This was about recognition, seeing that the man holding her child was someone entirely different from the one who had terrified her 2 years ago. The growth hadn't been one-sided. Celine had also had to confront her own patterns, her own fears, her own tendency to build walls so high that love couldn't scale them. Therapy had helped her understand the difference between healthy caution and self-protective isolation. Learning to trust again had been as much work for her as learning to be trustworthy had been for Cole. There had been arguments, of course. Moments when old triggers flared and old patterns threatened to reassert themselves. The difference was in how they handled conflict now, with respect instead of weapons, with curiosity instead of contempt, with the shared goal of resolution rather than the desire to win at any cost. We're not going to agree on everything, Celine had said during one particularly tense discussion about discipline strategies. But we're going to disagree like adults who care about each other, not like enemies trying to score points. You're right, Cole had replied, and the simple acknowledgement had diffused the tension more effectively than any elaborate apology could have. I'm sorry. Let's start over and actually listen to each other this time. It was in those small moments of choosing growth over ego, connection over control, that their new relationship had been built. Not on the passion and intensity of their first love affair, but on the deeper foundation of genuine respect and hard-won understanding. Now, as they walked home through the park with leaves crunching under their feet and their children's laughter filling the air around them, Celine marveled at how different happiness could look the second time around. Less desperate, more sustainable. Less about need and more about choice. Less about completing each other and more about choosing to build something together. I love our family, James announced suddenly, his serious little face turned up toward both parents. I love Mama and Daddy and Emma and our house and our friends and everything. Everything. Emma agreed enthusiastically from her perch on Cole's shoulders. Love everything. We love you too, Celine and Cole said in unison, and then laughed at their synchronized response. Even when we're grumpy. James wanted clarification on this important point. Especially when you're grumpy, Cole assured him. Love doesn't stop when people have difficult feelings. Good. James nodded with satisfaction. Because sometimes I'm very grumpy. Sometimes we all are, Celine agreed. But we work through it together. As they reached their building, Cole had moved into an apartment in their complex 6 months ago, close enough to be part of daily life, but separate enough to maintain healthy boundaries. Celine reflected on the lessons that had brought them to this point. Love, she had learned, wasn't about finding someone perfect. It was about finding someone willing to do the work of becoming better. Forgiveness wasn't about forgetting or pretending the past hadn't happened. It was about choosing to build a different future together. Trust wasn't something that could be demanded or rushed. It was something that had to be earned through consistent actions over time. Most importantly, she had learned that people could change, but only if they truly wanted to and were willing to do the difficult work that real transformation required. Cole had spent 2 years proving that he was capable of that kind of change, not through grand gestures or expensive gifts, but through the daily choice to be better than he had been the day before. Thank you, Cole said quietly as they stood in the lobby of their building, children sticky and tired from their afternoon of play. For what? For giving me the chance to be their father. For giving us the chance to try again. For seeing that I could become someone different than who I was. Thank you for becoming that someone, Celine replied. For doing the work even when it was hard. For putting them first even when it cost you something. For proving that love can be both passionate and safe. As they said goodbye for the evening, Cole would see them again tomorrow for Sunday brunch, a new tradition they had established, Celine felt the deep satisfaction of a life rebuilt on solid ground. Not perfect ground, but honest ground. Ground that could support the weight of real love, complicated love, love that had survived the worst and chosen to believe in the possibility of better. The story of Celine Westbrook and Cole Winthrop wasn't a fairy tale. It was something better, a testament to the power of accountability, the possibility of redemption, and the courage required to love someone despite knowing exactly what they were capable of at their worst. Sometimes the greatest love stories weren't about finding your perfect match. Sometimes they were about two imperfect people choosing to grow together, to face their shadows together, to build something beautiful from the ruins of what they had destroyed. And sometimes, just sometimes, love really could conquer all, not easily, not quickly, but completely. The moral of their story wasn't that love conquers all without effort, or that forgiveness should be given freely without accountability. The moral was deeper and more complex than that. It was that actions have consequences that ripple through generations, affecting not just the people who make choices, but the innocent lives that depend on them. It was that true change requires genuine accountability, not just regret, but actual transformation of behavior and character. It was that children deserve protection, but they also deserve the chance to know their complete family story when that can be done safely. It was that forgiveness isn't about forgetting or excusing harmful behavior. It's about choosing to build a different future while remembering the lessons of the past. It was that trust must be earned through consistent actions over time, not granted based on promises or potential. Most importantly, it was that people can change, but only when they take full responsibility for their actions and commit to the difficult work of becoming better. Not everyone is capable of that kind of transformation, but for those who are willing to do the work, redemption is possible. Love, real love, isn't about finding someone who will never hurt you. It's about finding someone who will take responsibility when they do hurt you and work to ensure it never happens again. It's about building relationships on the foundation of respect, honesty, and genuine care for each other's well-being. Celine and Cole's story was a reminder that our worst moments don't have to define us, but they also don't disappear just because we regret them. The past remains part of the story, but it doesn't have to dictate the ending. With enough courage, accountability, and commitment to growth, even the most broken relationships can be rebuilt into something stronger than they were before. Their children would grow up knowing that their parents had faced enormous challenges and had chosen to overcome them together. They would learn that love requires work, that forgiveness requires earning, and that families can be broken and repaired if everyone is willing to do their part. Emma and James would learn that strength isn't about never falling down. It's about getting back up and making different choices. They would learn that love isn't about perfection. It's about growth, commitment, and the daily choice to treat each other with kindness and respect. Most importantly, they would learn that their own worth wasn't dependent on anyone else's approval or actions. They would grow up knowing they were loved unconditionally, not because they were perfect, but because they were themselves. If this story of redemption and second chances has moved you, subscribe to Lux Love Chronicles with Mr. Wentworth for more tales of love, loss, and the courage required to rebuild what we've broken. Share your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe people can truly change, or are some mistakes unforgivable? Hit that notification bell because next week's story will challenge your assumptions about justice, mercy, and the complexity of human nature in ways that will leave you questioning everything you think you know about relationships and forgiveness. Remember, the greatest love stories aren't always the easiest ones. Sometimes they're the ones that require us to grow, to face our shadows, to become better than we thought possible. Sometimes they're the ones that remind us that love isn't just a feeling. It's a choice we make every single day, especially when it's difficult. The truth is that we all have the capacity for both harm and healing, for destruction and creation, for our worst selves and our best selves. The question isn't whether we'll make mistakes. We will. The question is what we'll do with those mistakes, whether we'll let them define us or use them as stepping stones toward becoming the people we're meant to be. Celine and Cole's story is ultimately about hope, not naive hope that ignores reality, but informed hope that acknowledges the past while choosing to believe in the possibility of a better future. It's about the courage required to love again after being hurt, to trust again after being betrayed, to believe in someone's capacity for change even when their track record suggests otherwise. But most of all, it's about the responsibility we all have to be worthy of the love we're given, to protect the hearts that trust us, and to never take for granted the precious gift of someone's faith in our ability to be better than we've been before. Because in the end, that's what love really is, not just accepting someone as they are, but believing in who they can become and supporting them on the journey to get there. And sometimes, if we're very lucky and very committed to the work, we get to build something beautiful together from the ashes of what we almost lost forever.